Good morning, YouTube. I'm going to continue my series of videos reviewing ICF Brands today. We're going to do SuperForm. I'm wearing my red shorts in honor of the red webbed ICF. Little housekeeping first. Do want to remind everybody we've got the Renolite training, which is the PVC membrane for pools. August 5th in New Orleans, or it's actually Slidell, Louisiana, just north of Pontchartrain. It's going to be a really good event with the guys from Renolite, where we will be installing a membrane on a KOA campgrounds pool. Anyone's free to attend. Check it out, get your hands on it, feel it, touch it. It's the best way to learn. And that's going to start on August 5th, and it basically goes till we're done. And we have to be done before August 15th, because August 15th we'll be right here training on ICF pools. Another event in Springfield, Missouri, where we're close to all of my well-known pools. We do site visits at several of them. We will do live pour concrete on a monopore pool, and we'll have all the reps in. Different guys like Pentair, Basecrete, Renolite will be here right after they go to New Orleans. They'll follow us up the highway. We'll be going through automation, hydraulics, concrete, really everything you need to know about a pool to successfully build it. One thing about it, Eric is here. People absolutely loved his just virtual walkthrough. He sits over here, we bust out the TV, and he literally builds a pool in SketchUp, one piece at a time. So, you know, I take you to different job sites and show you real world scenarios, but seeing it go one step at a time in a 30-minute window really brings it all globally together. He's fantastic. He's one of the smartest human beings I've ever met in person, yet he speaks in a way everybody gets. And if you guys have talked to him on the phone, you know what I mean. He is a massive asset to our team. And Patrick as well. And so that's where I'll get to. If you email support@all3pools.com, or you can just go on the website to all3pools.com, fill out the form. Pat hits you back really quick, gets you all the information from how to book. The cool thing about where we're doing this now is we're super close to a couple really trendy hotels downtown. We're not far from some of the nicer convention center hotels and stuff. So we got a really nice centralized location for you guys, close to a lot of the dining and stuff in town. So after training is over, you can kind of enjoy yourselves a little bit. It'll be fantastic. But without further ado, let's get into SuperForm. So SuperForm came out in 1998 in Pincher Creek, Alberta, Canada. They recently, and I say recently, is in the last few years, added a second plant in Cincinnati, Ohio. So now they're in Western Canada, Eastern United States. You know me in logistics, like all these blocks should cost about the same, but then what do they cost to get to your job site? And that can be significant in certain instances. So they're in two places. They're pretty well spread out, kind of like Nudura's in two places. But you know, some of these places have 14, 15 manufacturers, which will make them closer to you in a lot of cases. But assuming the price is right to your door, I think it's a really good block. And like I said, Cincinnati, Ohio, if you're anywhere within a few hundred miles of that, or, you know, the Northwest, which is very popular ICF, you know, whether it's in the US or Canada, really, really good logistics from those areas. So as you guys may remember, I try to give a plug, if it's not a brand that I deal with on a daily basis, to whoever gave it to me. So in this case, is a guy named Chris Clausen. He is located up in central Missouri, and he called me up after he saw my video analyzing 6 different brands in one video, and SuperForm wasn't one of them. He goes, "Oh, you should have done Super." And I'm like, "I don't have any Super." He's like, "I'm going to fix that for you." He literally drove them right down to my house and gave me a rack of straights and each of their corners. And I'll get into all the details on it. And it was just really nice of him. So you've seen in front of me here is his contact information. If you got any SuperForm needs in, you know, Missouri, or probably even Kansas, maybe Iowa, I don't know how far he goes, give him a shout. Really down-to-earth guy who just really likes ICF, which is all I ask for out of anybody. I think there's a lot of brands that will all give you a good, successful result, and SuperForm is one of those, and it's all about the rep, and he seems like a really great guy. I've met him one time, talked to him on the phone a few times, really good guy. So, a couple of the things you're gonna notice that are different. They're red. I don't think that that's for a purpose, but no, they look cool. So we'll go with that. They are on 6-inch centers, similar to Build Block and Amvic in that way. That does make them a little more resistant to like blowouts and stuff. I think some of them, it depends on their density of their foam. They need that because Amvic in particular has 6-inch centers, but when they go to the thicker foam for their R30 block, they go to 8-inch centers. So the one thing about the 6-inch centers is that technically supposed to be stronger. The SuperForm does advertise that they have more plastic in their ICF than anybody else, making them very robust. They claim that these are the strongest corners in the business. If you'll notice, if you remember my Fox Blocks video, they have this diagonal truss as well, and they have a fantastic corner. So I can assume that this is at least as good, as strong as the Fox, because I've seen the plastic cage that's in that corner, and it looks a lot like Fox, and I've always said Fox is my favorite corner that I've worked with. I've never worked with a Super, but I would not be afraid of this corner at all. I think it's probably very, very strong. So their corners are excellent. You will notice that they're not very tall. They are 12 inches high. The good side of that is that, Fox, Build, name it, Amvic, all the 16-inch high blocks will make an 8-foot wall, but they don't make a 9-foot wall. They'll go 9.4, so you'll have a rip course. Or if you go to 10, you'll have a rip course. Nudura, they're 18 inches tall, so they don't make an 8-foot wall. They make a 9-foot wall, and that's all assuming you're starting right on the floor, mind you. In a lot of cases, we're not. But there's always going to be a rip course with those blocks, it seems like. These blocks being on 1-foot centers, if you're starting at floor grade, almost every even number of 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, these blocks are going to hit all those ceiling heights without a rip course. At least that's the theory. So that's kind of nice. I will say that I can't see how that wouldn't make you slightly slower because you're laying more courses. No matter what, it is more courses, it's more blocks to stack. This block here is 4 square feet. At Fox is 5.33 square feet. 2 of these blocks, a Nudura would be 12 square feet, and this would be 8. So there is, every block you lay, you're laying less square feet. Not a big negative. Obviously, one of the things that we do that's not very important to a lot of ICF guys, but in the pool game definitely is we like to do one-sided forms for some of our finishes, as it just alleviates a lot of work. Like whether it's Basecrete or Eco Finish, they all require so much less prep direct to concrete than they do on ICF. So there's 2 things we like to do. One is get more insulation on the outside if we can, and the other is a one-sided form. Fox doesn't have that. They haven't had it in a few years. Nudura ones are very good. Build Block hard walls are good. They have just come out with a one-sided form. When it is stripped, I'll show you a picture. It looks a lot like Nudura 1. And they do sell plywood in 8-foot lengths, so it'll cover 2 blocks, pre-drilled for the screws that would hold that onto their system. And that comes in 6, 8, and 10-inch core thickness. For us, on an Infinity Edge, we often go to a 12-inch core, so there would be instances where maybe that 10-inch isn't enough, but that's a pretty rare thing. That's when we have like an 8-foot wall holding water back and nothing on the other side. Otherwise, that would be plenty of concrete. So they do make a one-sided block, which is nice. Okay, so the other thing is, I like the Nudura XR35s, the 4-inch thick foam, because it allows us to hide some of our pipes inside of the wall. Once we pour, we cut it away just like you're putting wire, but we put a 2-inch pipe in that 4-inch cavity, fill it back with foam, and now it's inside the thermal mass, but it's also completely protected from ground movement. We do it a lot in California when we have seismic worries, because if the pool and the gravel in the ditch are moving in opposite directions in an earthquake, it will shear the pipe off. So having it inside the foam protects it from that. We really like that. So I asked Chris, what do you guys have for a higher than normal R value? Because Fox Blocks has what they call an energy stick that inserts into the web that makes it 4 inches thick on one side. Nudura obviously has 4-inch thick. Amvic has that. And he told me they don't have an extra thick form, but they have this thickness. It's called the Max Plus, and it's infused with graphite. I'll show you a picture of it. It's gray, and that graphite is going to make the thermal transfer considerably slower. And it gets to an R29. Up in Canada, they're starting to legislate higher R values. That's why a lot of these Canadian companies are a little ahead of the game on making higher R value block. So instead of these guys thickening the foam, they've figured out a way to put an additive in their EPS to get them a higher R value. So that's how they approach that. Wouldn't come in as handy for me when I'm trying to hide pipe, but 99% of you are getting that for the R value, and they have a product that gets you really close to R30. Now, the last thing I'll say on a positive note on the SuperForm was from Chris, and he just goes, he's like me, I think that all these blocks are good, all these blocks will work well for your project if it makes sense in your market for you. Just there's a lot of, like I said, logistical concerns that really make or break a deal oftentimes. And Chris said, the thing I like is the distribution network with SuperForm is everybody's a stocking dealer. A lot of blocks, a guy will sign up early on just to get some block, and he'll be a non-stocking dealer. I mean, he orders them when you need them. He pays a little higher price than a stocking dealer who's willing to have a warehouse and put stock on the shelves. But he's going to, they're not usually as passionate of a rep because that's not what they're doing for their daily job almost. So all the SuperForm guys stock. So they're already kind of in. And he goes, and also it's the people behind the product. And what he means by that is, corporate, whatever. I know from a deal I was doing in North Carolina that didn't end up going SuperForm. That guy was very impressed with the SuperForm team though. So I know SuperForm, I've only met a couple guys, honestly. When I was at World of Concrete, I'll show you a video I shot with one of their higher ups and Harvey. If you guys know Harvey, if you've ever looked into SuperForm, he probably popped up. Big old handlebar mustache. He's like straight out of Central Casting for a big burly Canadian builder. Really cool guy. He came to my training just about a year ago here in Missouri to learn more about pools. And he was actually kind of a fountain of information for people. I think, people didn't know exactly how to take him at first because he's this big, loud Canadian guy. But I think a lot of people really quickly realized that he's a super smart ICF guy with a lot of passion for the product. When I ran into him at World of Concrete this year, he was winning an award for his last house that he did before going on board with SuperForm. And just seeing him have the pride and talking about ICF with everybody, he's a great asset to the community is what I mean. Like, I love all these guys running. I met guys from Logix and all these other places that I don't really get to see very often. At World of Concrete, I'm like, man, this is a great community. There's so many good people in the game that are just trying to grow ICF in general. That's all I know from SuperForm. There's probably 100 more employees that are all like those guys, but the ones I've met are fantastic. So I believe Chris is probably very correct about that they got really good support behind their products. Now, lastly, you guys know that I always try to throw a couple of things that I don't love about a block. I think that that's only fair. None of these blocks are perfect. If they were, there wouldn't be any other blocks. You get a perfect block, everybody uses it, and we're done. One thing, this is actually something I don't dislike. It'll come in 4 blocks high because they're 1 foot tall. They just band them with baling twine. You see those Fox blocks back there are cardboarded up, and that could be nice, I guess. But what typically happens, we have a house with 100 pallets of that. We end up with a couple hundred pieces of cardboard we're trying to weight down with rocks or something before we can throw them away, keep them from blowing into the neighbor's yard. So I kind of like that these are just, you're gonna have a little small bundle of twine on the ground. But let me get into a couple of the things on the anatomy. In addition to the 6-inch webs, they have lines every inch instead of every 2 inches. That's actually nice. But you'll notice the nubs. I always evaluate the nubs for how robust they are. They're good and robust. You're not going to damage them walking around a job site too easily. However, if you notice, these have male and female nubs, okay? And that means you have a top and a bottom to these. If you notice, that's pretty obvious because they only have rebar chairs on one side of the web. They have a top. Most of the blocks I've shown you so far don't have a top. They go either way. So that also should tell you that there is a left corner and a right corner. Now, I know for sure that Harvey will tell you that completely doesn't matter, but to me, I'd rather it not be that way. I'd rather just grab corners and they go either way. That's how most of the blocks I've reviewed so far have 2-way corners or reversible corners. This is one of the blocks that doesn't. And there's several blocks out there that have left corners and right corners. Ultimately, it's okay. I just feel like most of the time our job sites, we've got a couple dingleberries that are, young guys that are just learning, and they're the ones bringing us all of our ICF. And it's just one more thing for them to think about to bring a left and a right every time they bring us corners, or else it's just going to make us a little less efficient, which goes back to this 12-inch high form. you are going to lay more courses. It is going to be slightly slower. I can't figure out how it wouldn't be a little slower because you're laying more blocks. I mean, every block takes X amount of time to go, dun, dun. You're going to do that more times. Again, those are small negatives, guys. These are really nice blocks. I don't really care about the left and right corner. It's just something that in a perfect world would not exist. In my mind, they would all go either way. And again, the 12-inch high, I understand why. I think there's positives and negatives to it. And that's why it's in the negatives, but it was also in the positives. So guys, it's a really cool block. That's all I've got on the negatives. It's really, you know, other than maybe logistics, if you live like South Florida or way down in, you know, SoCal, you're pretty far away from their manufacturing, and that might become logistically a little more expensive. I don't know for sure on that. It just kind of depends on their, you know, stocking dealers, but really neat block. And from the people I've dealt with at Super, really good people. So by all means, I couldn't recommend giving them a shot at your project anymore. And I will see you guys next week.